Talking about a start warning now that some children in the UK are starting school not able to read simple words or speak in full sentences. It's coming from the government, which has announced it's stepping up its efforts to tackle the problem over the next 10 years. And it wants parents to play a bigger role too. Now, West Somerset is currently ranked as the worst area in the whole country for social mobility, which basically means it has the least prospects for children who come from poor or disadvantaged backgrounds. Kathrine See is with me, the Secretary for West Somerset Labour and Campaign to Keep the Alcombe Children's Centre open. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, just go through, how important do you think early support is for children in terms of their prospects later in life?
Well, I think there are two main points here about what's been said by Damian Hinds. I mean, one of them is that there is a huge amount of evidence to support the need for early intervention, and that children's centres actually are the best way to deliver this. Now, the Frank Field Review, which was commissioned in 2010 by the Conservative Coalition, was clear that Sure Start centres were pivotal in delivering early years care. And it showed that children growing up in Sure Start areas had improved behaviour and independence due to better parenting and the home learning environment. And actually, the Triple P programme, Positive Parenting Programme, which was delivered through the centres, is exactly the kind of support that Damian Hinds is saying is necessary. Yet his government has systematically closed down the Sure Start centres. And in West Somerset, we've gone from 4 to 1. There's a complete lack of investment in communities, and children's centres are closed down. We've got disappearing children's services. Physical impairment and medical support team has gone. Portage is desperately underfunded. Autism services desperately underfunded. We've got a 40% increase in Somerset in home education as schools are struggling to meet children's needs due to government cuts.
Well, the government says it is investing money to try and make improvements in this area, but it also wants parents to do more. So perhaps the bigger question here is whose responsibility, ultimately, do you think this is?
Right, OK, well, there are 20% of children with speaking and learning difficulties when they arrive at school. But I don't think it's any coincidence that there are 30% of children in this country living in poverty. Now, Damian Hinds has made no relationship between poverty and social mobility. We have got parents struggling to pay bills and feed their children, millions of people in precarious work and on 0 hours contracts, living in insecure accommodation. We've got people reliant on appalling public transport, unable to access any services or support. We've got thousands of families reliant on food banks and many more struggling through the summer holidays to feed their children. Families are waiting weeks to receive universal credit and living in constant fear of sanctions with underfunded schools, no adult education, underfunded mental health services. These are the real causes of low social mobility. Yet the government wants to deflect attention from this and blame parents.
They're not blaming parents, but surely do you not agree, though, that parents are they are the people who have had the children? Are you saying that they have no responsibility in this whatsoever?
Of course parents have responsibility for
So
their
what is
children.
their responsibility?
How are parents supposed to focus on teaching children to read as well as struggling to pay bills and keep a roof over their heads?
So what's their responsibility?
What is the government's responsibility?
I'm asking you, though, what's the parents' responsibility? Can you answer that question?
The responsibility is to do their best to bring up their children. But how are they supposed to do that when we have such desperate situation where parents are struggling to actually feed their children?
Well, I'm just having
that's the real scandal here. Damian Hinds describes this as a persistent scandal. The real scandal here is that families are being persistently let down by this government. The real scandal is that children arrive at school hungry.
So what's the answer then when they're trying to make improvements now? What's the answer when the pot is shrinking? What would you do?
Well, I just don't believe that the pot is shrinking. Austerity is a political choice. It's not an economic one. This government is enforcing poverty on people. It's not a situation which can't be reversed. It's a choice made by this government.
In terms of West Somerset, do you see improvements being made? I've spoken to many people over the last few days who say we are trying our best. There is a lot of good happening in West Somerset. Do you see that?
We have the lowest social mobility in the entire country. We've gone from 4 Sure Start children's centres to 1, which is only open part-time and provides a very limited range of services. Now, the staff in those children's centres are definitely doing their best, but the money is not coming from up above. We have underfunded schools, appalling public transport, no adult education, rising food bank use, no council housing, very little secure work. These are the real causes of this problem. It's not because parents aren't reading at home with their children.
OK, Kathrine, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much. The Secretary of West Somerset Labour there. In response to the criticism here, the government has told us that today's announcement builds on the £20 million announced to narrow the gap between disadvantaged children and their peers and to provide practical tools and advice to parents so that they can help their children learn new words through simple steps like reading and singing nursery rhymes. Any thoughts on this? Do let me know. 81333. Start your message with the word Somerset. Thank you very much, Emma. I appreciate all of your comments that are coming through in regards to the interview just after 7:30 with Kathrine, talking social mobility and what was said by Damian Hinds, the Secretary of State for Education, on early years learning, really. The fact that there are some children, they get to school, they get to the early years of education, some of them, they cannot read, they cannot write, how this can be put right. Following on from the comments, thank you very much to Bob in Cardiff. Claire, the question was asked, how do we overcome the problem? The answer is, don't have children. If you can't supply them with a good quality of education or life, then don't have them. Is it fair to bring a child into a situation where they don't get a good quality of life? John in Moreland, thank you for this, Claire. In my opinion, first and foremost, children are their parents' responsibility. The government might step in, but having children is not compulsory. And thank you to the no-name texter. We see too many children occupied simply with a tablet or game where they just tap the screen and don't interact with others. Valuable time which could be spent teaching them to read. My parents and grandparents always let me play games, but encourage me to read at every opportunity. It's all too easy to blame others for your own failings. We know for several years West Somerset has been ranked the worst area in the whole country when it comes to opportunities for disadvantaged children. And yesterday the government said that it was a scandal that some children in the UK are starting school unable to read simple words or speak in full sentences, and it's pledged to make significant improvements over the next decade. But whose responsibility for tackling the issue of social mobility? Where does it lie? Well, the Education Secretary, as I say, Damian Hinds, speaking yesterday, said parents have a key role to play.
For children in general, and particularly for the youngest children, of course, most of their time is spent at home. And so although it is a difficult area, because nobody wants to be interfering, the evidence does bring you to those earliest years and does bring you to the home learning environment. And to be really serious about tackling social mobility, yes, we have to take these things on.
Claire Pound is the manager of the charity Home Start West Somerset, which is based in Minehead. Morning to you, Claire.
Good morning, Claire.
So first of all, can you just explain for me the work that you do with young families in this county?
Well, we a sort of small charity that offers support, friendship and practical help to the families in West Somerset. The unique part about it is that we actually use trained volunteers to provide that help and support in the family's home. So initially, that brings on a much better relationship with the family and the volunteer rather than, sort of paid worker with a lanyard around their neck with certain outcomes to achieve within 6 weeks. We have the time to build up that relationship with that family and the volunteer in order to help them, properly and more appropriately.
We've been hearing since the Secretary spoke, children not being able to read or write a sentence before they go to primary school. I mean, that's just one example. In your experience in West Somerset, how common are problems like that?
Extremely common, and I don't think they've even sort of scraped the surface, really. The statement, Damien, is absolutely true. It is, children aren't sort of preschool ready or nursery ready at all. We're seeing a lot more the sort of language communication problems from young children. And you can't deny the facts. The facts are there. So
yeah. Do you agree, and I know it is a tough question for many, but when we do talk about responsibility here, do you agree with the Education Secretary that parents do need to take a bigger role before their children go to school?
I do agree with the statement that parents, are their main the main influence on children, on their own children, and actually the main educators of their children. I don't think the total responsibility relies with the parents. I think everybody has a sort of certain degree of responsibility. The communities, nurseries, playgroups, churches, other family members. Everybody sort of should have their sort of input really into a child's sort of education. What I will say is that his sort of talking about the sort of home environment, which again I agree, that is a good place to sort of children to learn and things. But these days, families' home environments, there's so many other problems and issues. I mean, a lot of parents, single parents, there's low income, there's substance misuse, mental health problems, debts, housing, special education needs. Actually the sort of
there are wider issues.
Yeah, exactly. Making your home a learning environment is, I'm afraid, becoming much more of a low priority. And it's everything else we need to sort of sort out first, or not sort out, but just try and help with first, which is what we at Home Start try to do, with these parents directly.
As a charity in West Somerset, would you say for you are desperately seeking support? Is it from the community? Is it from the government? I guess, is it from both?
Everything. Yeah, we'd love to have more support from the government, and acknowledging that the Home Start schemes are all over the country and doing some brilliant work, and yet aren't sort of supported by the government. We are well supported within our own community. We do have, sort of 40 plus volunteers. We'd always love more because we need more. Our referrals are coming in so fast that we could do so much more, but there's always a stopping block, and generally that's down to money.
Yeah. Claire, I really appreciate you coming on the programme this morning. Thank you very much. Claire Pound there, the manager of the Minehead-based charity Home Start West Somerset. It's 8:40.